we'll kick off. And thank you for being here. So we have a really deep agenda. We're going to go through, obviously, a little bit of an overview so you understand our models. I'll be talking one slide on marketing. I promise no more than that. And then right into hybrid topology. How do you manage the hybrid? We're going to talk to the hybrid functionalities in Azure that are required to couple into the premise in order to make that connection secure, strong, and obviously scalable. Then we're going to talk into pieces where I believe hybrid topology solutions are going to come to life. Areas like web services, like data services, like public Tier 1 and Tier 2 applications that meet the criteria, and I highlight meet the criteria. And then I'm going to talk about where we think it's headed, and also make sure that you understand we do get it. We understand what it means to be hybrid, and we understand that public cloud may be a trepidation for some. So mine will talk to where I think the pieces fit right now, currently, and obviously down the road, anything can change. So, this is the one marketing slide, but I think it's important to understand that we want customers to walk with us. We're not here to sell a cloud stack and a new solution to you, right? We want to give you a step up from where you are with the Windows stack to the cloud, right? To the private cloud in specifics. So the DIY cloud guidance that we provide on Microsoft.com has all of the how-to prescriptive guidance for you to take your current Windows and System Center frame on Windows Current 08 and System Center Current and move up to a cloud. No net new investment. It'll tell you what you're missing, it'll walk you through how to configure it, and it'll stand you up to private cloud version 1 from Microsoft. Now, as you've already saw throughout TechEd, System Center 2012's freight train is coming. It's going to land very soon, and it's going to definitely upgrade that V1 private cloud to a much stronger V2 cloud. But what I want to get really clear is we've been selling a cloud for 6 months now, and it doesn't have System Center 2012 in it. So be aware that we didn't just start this journey because System Center 2012 is so great that now we can talk to it. We've been on the journey. If you've been in the pavilion and seen the Intel booth or the the HP booth, we have partners already deploying our current version of our cloud. We have Dell, HP, Siemens, Fujitsu deploying OEM versions of it, tied to their own hardware in a certified model. So this is not new. This stuff is out there. It may be new because maybe we're not doing the best job communicating it. Now, as we move forward into next wave releases of our products, we'll continue to infuse these cloud functionalities. So you're going to see, obviously, this as a big part of our momentum in the Windows Server stack to partner and parity with our System Center brethren who are bringing out a fabulous, fabulous product in the fall to winter timeframe. Now, the key differentiation is, and this one is very important, we want to empower a new class of IT people that are non-IT, and we call those people the application owners. And so we want to drive an HR person, for instance, to be able to deploy their own service. That service could be made up of 3 or 4 different applications, all could be multi-tier. We want to bring them in a portal and let them hit a button called deploy, or pick a service and deploy it. We're not asking them to become as smart as all of us are on IT. We're asking them to remove us from the requirement to push out their new needs. We give them their templates, they deploy their stuff. It works for them. It's pre-configured. It's just on demand, a lot like movies. But we're empowering the application owner to be driven to do that now, so we can go back and do the innovation work we need to in the back end for our companies. Right? The private cloud gives you one great thing, hopefully more automation, more orchestration, so you get back the ability to do your job. Get away from that traditional work of having to oversight or manage everybody's OU and systems. Right? So one of the key things to take out of our stack is we want to empower an HR administrator to deploy the HR app. Now that sounds crazy, but if you've seen Conchero, and I'll show it today, it's very possible for us to deliver templates to them, and they can do exactly that. So application-driven, comprehensive, and open, meaning more than just our platform, Windows, Linux, Zen, VMware. We're going across. When you look at System Center, you're also looking at managing 400 Linux distributions in the physical System Center Management Suite through MPs, through management packs. If you're not aware that they can do that, yes, they can. So we're well beyond Windows management at a physical and virtual frame. You're talking about HPAIX and Solaris, and you're talking about Windows. And then you're talking about multi-hypervisor management. So when you look at that comprehensive system suite, it's pretty profound. At the end of the day, we bring it all together so that we can bridge both areas. Now, don't laugh yet, but you're gonna laugh. This is the question I get the most. Private cloud, public cloud, which one? Both, right? No one really knows where they want to go, right? They're not really sure how to endeavor upon building this out for their corporate architects and for their corporation's specific unique designs. So everyone's cloud is going to be unique. Don't have to build to a framework of some other company. So lots of confusion out there. No one really is educated on this whole thing about public and private cloud. I mean, I'll ask the question, do you all feel like you know everything cloud? If you do, hands up. Public cloud, do you know public cloud? Hands up. Private cloud. Yeah, I feel the same way. I mean, it's so new to everyone that it's kind of like a work in progress. And it reminds me of virtualization when it was at its beginning stages, because it was the similar thing for virtualization as it was prior to that for those who did terminal services back in the early 90s. We didn't know what it was going to be. We thought it was just recreating the wheel from the 70s, right? We really didn't get it. So there's lots of confusion out there. I hope to demystify that today. So we'll try to get to it. Why is it important to do hybrid? And I'm sure I will resonate with just these small little bullets. Number one, it's best of both worlds. You're going to use some public, right? You may only use the web front ends. You may just throw up a PHP application or a .NET application. You may use a worker role or a web worker role. You may never put customer data up there. You may never put core business systems up there. You may never put compliant type systems that hold data based on FIPS, HIPAA, or DoD/CC common criteria. I don't think we're going to expose that stuff to anyone's cloud, right? Not without us owning the facility that's housing it, so that becomes a private cloud by default. Now I'll ask my question, anybody willing to put core business system stuff up on the public cloud? Raise your hand. One person, two people, three people, 4, 5. Okay, how many want to put it in the private? How many people want to put stuff up in the private cloud? Pretty much everyone else. So that's pretty much what we're finding out too, which is why our emphasis is on the private cloud right now, as you've seen with the cloud power stuff. But understand that there are reasons why you want to use the public cloud. And I do believe at some point when it matures, people will possibly go there for this. But I don't know if they'll go there right now. And this is, again, my perspective of where I think we are right now. But I do think if I'm a retail company that has an e-commerce site that does seasonal large load distribution across the United States and the global market, that I may be better off putting my web front end for my retail site up in Azure, linking it back to my premise data store for elasticity, for content distribution, and shortest hop to source for my customers, so they get the best experience, right? So that's for sure going to benefit me to use a public and private hybrid, right? And the hybrid also includes hosted, by the way. So there's 3 tiers to it. There's private, public, and hosted, right? Hosted could be hosted public, hosted private, or a mix of both. So you have a lot of different architectural designs. But I also would like to use public as an archive place. We see a lot of that today. SkyDrive for consumers. You have a lot of these third-party companies out there doing encrypted archiving up in the cloud so you can do site recovery, right? For HR and finance, you need to back up their data long-term. They'll pump it up there. So be aware of that. Now, This is just the real world. This is 2 weeks worth of press on why not to go public and how bad it can be when you get exposed. Now, I'm just throwing this out there. I love Amazon, and I'm not trying to pick on them because I do like Amazon quite a bit. They're a great architecture. But this is the public cloud. This is what's possible when hackers get excited about going after an entirely new frame that they haven't been able to play with before. And we haven't even seen the beginning stages of what's to come, in my opinion. And in my opinion, not my company's opinion, Peter Meister's opinion. I think the hackers are going to target this stuff like nobody's business, so we haven't even begun to see the kinds of incapacitations that could come. And look at the incapacitations. We're not talking 4 or 5 hours here. We're talking 3.5 weeks PlayStation Network's been down. We're talking upwards of a week that Amazon lost connectivity. We're not talking hours. Imagine if you offshored your entire operations there. Your company could go under. Your business could be shut down, right? So I want to give you the real world. This is possible, even for our Azure and anyone else's cloud. So I'm not picking on Amazon. This could have happened to anybody's cloud, in my opinion. They're all insecure because the habits that people are taking up into these clouds there are no habits. If you've gone to Amazon, how many of you have played with Amazon EC2? How many of you have seen the base images? Raise your hand if you think they're secure. Exactly. But guess how many of them there are? 5,233 in each data center in the Amazon network. 4,954 are Linux distributions across 32 different OS types. 500 are Windows. And I guarantee you 95% of those images are insecure. Guess what? The cartels, the hackers, the fraud, the guys interested in credit card scamming, spammers, they're using that stuff all day long. And it's not just on Amazon's frame, it's on everyone's cloud frame. I'm sure even we have some, we just don't know. Or we do know, and we've shut them down. Everyone's working to try to keep up with shutting them down. So lots of things we need to continue to think about here. And I think for enterprises, this is very important that you make the right move and you do your homework. I don't care if you ever go to the public cloud. I would love you to use it, but I also hope you do what's right for your companies. So I hope that was a good overview of the state of the industry. Now, going into the architecture, we have our premise-based solutions today that sit on site, right? Our infrastructure as a service is no different than the data center topologies you've been deploying forever. If you're highly virtualized, you're likely already a baseline cloud. And that's also what we're trying to get across everyone. You're not having to build something new here. Take what you own and take it forward. So you have your infrastructure as a service. Azure is providing us the platform as a service. We can interconnect this, and I'll talk about that deep protocol relationship in a second. So imagine now you've got your hybrid. But you also have the hosted service provider. Microsoft is a service provider. Amazon's a service provider. They do a lot of Windows servers. Believe me, I love them. They're one of my best Windows Server partners in the virtual realm, right? We have other partners and hosters all over the planet. They want to become their own Azures. They want to be Azure, or they're OpenRack, or they're Rackspace, and they already have their own clouds, and they're not even Microsoft's cloud. So there's clouds everywhere. So there's providers that have that. We have to federate with them. We have to interconnect with them. How are we going to secure our connections across this hybrid? With good protocol and security, good firewall rules, good agents to connect over highly tunneled and encrypted channels so that we're protecting that data from being man-in-the-middled or piped out, right? Remember, the cloud opens up the ability for anything you send back to premise to get hijacked, right? I mean, that's what we're dealing with everything on the public internet today. Now, the consumer could be anyone, the app owner inside of an IT corporation who needs to remotely access their app at home, going back to the HR person who's working in finance on a Sunday in PJs who federates through a Conchero portal, RDPs in to do some payroll work, not having to leave the children, right? That's one aspect of an application owner coming in, whether it's on-prem or remote. It could also be your customers, your channel, your partners, your transaction relationship providers, those that you're working with at a federated identity management level, right? How many of you do Active Directory federation? Some? How many of you are using identity management solutions from us? Cool. So you understand what I'm talking about. We have to make sure we build the right way for that to be accomplished in the most secure fashion with the largest amount of multi-factor authentication that's available so that it's highly secure. On top of that, we have to layer encryption and all kinds of other things, both at the host layer, at the VM layer, to make sure that if that stuff is pulled, it's never able to be looked at because it's highly encrypted. It's not going to be in clear text, right? So, managing the cloud. Now, you've seen a lot, so I'm going to spend 30 seconds on this. We have Conchero, and I'm going to demonstrate this in a few minutes. We have the Conchero self-service portal. It's fantastic. We have the Virtual Machine Manager 2012 console for the IT guys that need to manage one cloud or all clouds within a corporation. Those clouds can be public, private, across 3 different hypervisors, right? So we have a really strong foundation now with the System Center 2012 suite coming to market, right? Very solid for us to be able to go out into that hybrid and centralize management down to a console or 2 consoles, to be fair. And I'll show you why I say I think it's 2, because Windows Azure has its own portal. And I kind of spend my time in both. But 2 is a whole lot better than the 7 to 8 I used to have. And so a really big improvement for us coming down the pike with this release of this new management tool. Now, the nice thing I like about our push towards System Center is multi-tenancy. And multi-tenancy, in my opinion, is the most important thing that we need to get out into the market, both for customers and hosters, specifically for hosters. Remember, there is one community in the cloud that needs multi-tenancy more than anyone, and it's the hosters, because they all now know they have to go from being traditional hosters to cloud providers, right? They have to transition their companies from I used to just host dedicated and shared services to now I have to host clouds and services. So every hoster we have in our hoster tier is moving to become a cloud provider. And they need multi-tenancy, because multi-tenancy is the only way that they can provide a virtual Active Directory. Think about that, right? How many of you think AD is multi-tenant today? Exactly. So something else has to take care of that. Now, that doesn't mean it may not change down the road, but what we have right now is a directorate for a single domain, right? Or multiple domains within an organization. Hoster cannot deploy just one customer and make a profit. They didn't deploy tens and thousands and hundreds of thousands. So if someone's going to come to them for off-site public cloud solution or private public solution caged for them, they need to be able to get to multi-tenancy to be successful. Now I'm going to go into the demo. I want to spend the bulk of my time showing you the real deal here. So give me a second to switch over. So how many of you have played with, at the Hands-On Labs, VMM 2012 this week? Oh, then this is going to be a good demo. So let me introduce to you Virtual Machine Manager 2012 console. I'll try to spend some time here because I think demos, let me ask, are demos more valuable than the rest of my deck? Hands up. Excellent. So this is our new Virtual Machine Manager 2012. In 2012, I'm able to manage my entire public, private, cloud environment, whether it's physical, whether it's virtual, and across 3 tiers of hypervisors. Okay? So you can see here, there's my Citrix Xen server, has no VMs. Here are all my data centers. Okay? So let me, because we have an Atlanta run running. So you can see, I have all my data centers around the globe. I can look into each one of them individually. I can manage the fabrics and the clouds associated to those data centers. I can assign security principals, control and ownership to OU level admins, not unlike what I did in the past in physical premise. So my habit translates. I'm able to look at all the different services that are running, all the different clouds that are in operation across my different groups. For instance, HR has their own line of business apps, and let me open that up so you know what that looks like. These apps primarily are multi-tiered applications, and then I'll show you how we create those. So this application, this line of business HR app, is made of 3 tiers. There's a data tier, there's an app tier, and there's a compute tier, right? So compute, network, and storage, those three things that we deal with for every application. Cool thing about Virtual Machine Manager is I get to frame that entire fabric for my application owner, with the smart knowledge that I have, so that it's automatically provisioned and deployed into a template for them. It's not pushed out into their private cloud. It's just a template for them to turn on. But that template has all the logic, all the configuration to turn on their HR application, but I put them in control of the enablement of that and then the management of that application, like user assignments. Do I really want to add a user when they need access to SAP or Siebel from the HR admin or the CRM admin of sales team? No. Empower them to do the adds to their own user bases within their divisions. Take that burden off of IT so we can work on innovation. So very solid interface. Now, when you go in and you start to get into, I want to create applications, all you do is you move into the mainframe and you say, I want to create a new service for that HR person, for that HR application owner. I click on a new template assignment. I'm brought into a designer. Now, this is the coolest stuff, and I love this. And let me tell you, I'm not a management expert, but this, for me, is the way we should all be working with building out our applications go forward. So let me explain what this is. This is called the designer. Actually, I don't know what the actual term of it is. I call it a designer. To me, it is a designer. From here, I can go on the left-hand side. I can grab all of my templates for my physical roles. Worker roles, app roles, web roles, compute roles. And I can drag them onto this desktop, and I can create a tiered application. So say I want to create an HR performance web solution. I go into SQL, I drag it out, it creates my compute logic for SQL, it's mounting the VHD template assigned to that base SQL data store, and it's creating a virtual network switch assignment to bridge it into my network. Automatically, it just did that, right? Now I want to create the second tier. So I want to build my web application logic. I drag it in. It interconnects the two together. It brings in my my app and my database logic, right? Now I want to bring the compute logic in. So I bring in the hardware templates. Now you're probably asking, what is all this stuff? Well, these are templates built to provide more than just virtual machine configuration. Remember in Hyper-V how we all configure a VM? And we just go in and we add that stuff, and it builds that VM configuration file, right? And that's all the knowledge about how that VHD mounts. Well, think of this as a layer above that. Not only can you just get the hardware specs, the operating specs, the data specs for the VHD, but now you can start assigning things like workflows, custom properties to auto-deploy and stand up the applications so that the automation now becomes part of the standard virtual machine, right? So rather than something sys-prepping and going out with manual and tasking left to do, this tiered application, when pushed out, will be ready to use the minute it gets the running state to the Conchero front-ended portal application for the application owner. Once they click Start, they wait a couple minutes, it says running, and they log into their HR app. And I'll try to go through as much of that as I can to show you how that operates. So when you're in here, some of the things that you'll see is that I control the order of enablement of this entire environment. Because it's a three-tiered application, I have to turn them on in order of, database first, app connects to database, right? And then compute to connect to the web front end, right? So I have to order the execution of these systems in order for these systems to go online and be operational and not have disconnects or fail to connect at protocol layers for their handshakes, right? So if I change orders, if I want to scale out these volumes, and scale out is important, let me explain what I'm doing here. I'm setting resource pooling, sizing, and minimums and maximums. So how many of you have seen this, where you can go in and say one person? So here's where two people. Here's where I set how big this can get in their cloud, or how small it can be, or whether they can scale it out or they can't scale it out. So here's where we take control of the application owner and say, I'll give you the bronze plan. small instance, 40 gigs, 20% of a core, right? So I give them a plan, but, oops, oh geez.
Does this apply on a per cloud basis or per policy?
This can apply down to the per cloud basis. And let me go back in there.
So if I've got 2 or 3 different groups using that one cloud,
Yes.
they have to share the same policy.
No, they don't have to share the same policy. The policy goes down to the service level. Yes. So the question was, am I stuck with one policy across a group, or can I get finite? And the answer is you can get extremely finite. I can assign a service to one individual user. Very cool stuff here. Right? So again, with Active Directory backing us up at the DIR service, the sky's the limit for who I give what. I can give a Conchero login to just some individual employee who needs to access one application, and they still get their self-service portal to go in and see that. Right? So I can really mix and match. Or I can give an OU admin entire control of their entire cloud. So for instance, in this case, let me just minimize this for a second. So when I'm in here, yeah, I'll stay in here. So here is Conchero, and I'm logged in only as the IT administrator for the entire cloud. So I get access to everything, right? I'm in control of the entire cloud. Now let me show you something. If I log out as the administrator, and I log in just as the HR person, watch what changes. And I hope this works. It should work. So you can see I have no access. I have access to nothing. So Conchero, based on Active Directory, is going to use the group policies assigned to me as a user and give me only what I'm willing or permission to see. So in this case, I'm just an HR admin user. I logged in because I'm in the Active Directory. It let me, but it knows I have no permissions inside of Conchero or VMM. Basically, I don't have any access because I have nothing running and nothing online. So I'm restricted. Right? So yes, control, complete control. And this is not just control across private. This would be control across Azure. So let me log back out and explain what I mean. And log back in with the proper admin password here. How many of you have had time to play with Conchero? How many of you have seen this before? A couple. This, to me, incredible. I mean, and if you want, do you want me to go through a little bit of this? Raise your hand if you'd like me to go through a little bit of this. Okay, great. So here I am. I'm now playing that role of the entire enterprise IT admin for the whole enterprise company of Contoso Corporation, right? So look at me as the traditional IT guy managing my premise solutions, just a new title, right? And oh, they threw cloud in. Thank you. You know, I'm now the cloud administrator. But it's still my same setup, in my opinion, right? It's still that same data center I was managing before. It's just presented in a new way to me, right? It adds the ability now for me to look across large segments. You can see the Azure public cloud pulls in. You see that at the bottom? Those are all of my Azure services coupled to my public cloud. But it's in the same management console as my private cloud. So I'm able to affect public and private right there. I can add applications, deploy services. I can do services interjoin for hybrid topologies. And I'm going to go into that. I don't want to skip that part. So I know I'm over-demoing here already. But the fact is, this is what is possible. And understand, those data centers can be made up of VMware, Xen, and Hyper-V. Now you tell me, that's amazing. So if you've got an existing VMware installation, you're not going to have to worry about having great management. That comes along for the ride. If you're Citrix and you're not Hyper-V, you got the same thing with us, right? So you have, we're not asking you, go use our hypervisor, right? We're saying, look, we're trying to be as open as we can. And I'm being serious when I say that. That is our goal, right? That's our goal. We want you to use this stuff because this is going to help you irregardless if you're a full Windows platform customer. This will help you if you're a full Citrix Zen server shop or a VMware shop, because I think we do it better, to be frank. And I have experience on VMware, so I feel I can say that with confidence. And that includes vSphere 4. So I think we do it in an easier way that's more intuitive. That's where our claim to fame is as Microsoft. We try to wizard things. Sometimes we fail the first time, clustering version 1. But then we get it second time, clustering version 2, wizard, MBSA tool, etc. But we do get it. And when we get it, we nail it. And then it becomes very easy. This makes it easy for me because, to be honest with you, behind the scenes, there's a ton of PowerShell. And I'm not a PowerShell expert. I don't want to have to go and learn a whole scripting language to do what this thing is doing for me. And this thing is doing amazing things behind the scenes with PowerShell. So lots of capability here for me. And this is hybrid, right? This is me managing a hybrid topology in one place. So I never leave this place, right? I'm here all the time. This would become my primary console, taking over for the 5 or 6 I had before with my individual management tools, right? And I would add SC console for my physical world because I would want to manage those 500 or 600 different distros that I may want to have in my environment should I choose to have that headache. I probably wouldn't choose that headache, but nonetheless. Now, the services frameworks are based on services that I want to put in place. So you can see I have accounting applications. I have Windows Azure portals, payroll apps running up in Azure. Did you see that Contoso payroll? Let me explain the first discussion point of hybrid interconnect. You have employees, right? How many of you have employees? Come on. You're all sleepy. Okay. You have employees, and this is a really good scenario. It's one of 2 I'll use. You have employees. They work a lot for a company. I feel that way this week because let me tell you, my days have been long, your days have been long, and this is a painful, long day here this week at TechEd. I'm working probably 15, 16 hours and then going to sleep. So do I want a VPN in a CorpNet to log my time in reporting or my vacation input? No, I want to go up to an Azure front-end portal, federate back through Azure Windows Identity Foundation, which is up in Azure. It's an identity service. It binds a federated interconnect to Active Directory federated service on my premise cloud. It sends me through with Windows Azure agent over a tunneled encrypted pipe and lets me input my time off to my HR management solution that's sitting on-prem. Great use of a public web front end, but never exposed my data. No need for the P2 stuff to get into the hands of the hackers. That's just one aspect of where you start thinking about bridge solutions, and I'll get much more into that depth in a second, but you can start to see what is possible. And what I hope to accomplish with this session is that you walk away with ideas that you can pitch, things that could truly help your company. Because do I want my employee coming in on Sunday to do something as simple? Do I have to continue to spend for VPN solutions to do something as simple as vacation submission? That could easily be expanded to do just about any type of application connection you want. So that could be sales guys checking their sales, entering new sales on the fly without having to do direct access, right? Or having to do VPN traditional. This just takes that all out of the equation. No loss of security, still federating, still encrypting, but instead of dealing with those additional layers, it's going through Azure Public and bringing that user to federated connection through an encrypted tunnel back to the premise to pull that data and present it to them. The minute they disconnect the web application, there's no artifacts, there's nothing out there. The hacker never could pipe into it, and there's nothing sitting up in the public for them to go after or try to expose. The library is where all of these services would be mounted. The jobs, think of it as a way to look at when I build something, when I configure something, when I deploy something, when I assign something, it runs a job, and then it runs a report. So I'm able to look into, did it deploy the template to the user? Were there issues? What were those issues? So this gives me insight even in the web form before I ever have to go to SC Console, right? So I get IT level log knowledge and auditing to know what's going on, right? Then, if I want to go and just overview in a dashboard, it'll give me my entire landscape of my environment and actions that I can take right within the portal. Now, this is the web version. The full version console is much more intrinsic. So when you get out of the web and you go into the full VMM, you're obviously in a position where you can, and let me try to exit out of this. This is the challenge of, so there we go. So in this environment, I can do everything. And let me explain this for the hardware people in the room. So let's go out to Fabric. And everyone's familiar with what Fabric means. Fabric means compute, network, and storage. Okay? It can also include third-party add-on load balancing environments, firewall and security and identity solutions. So here, on the left-hand side, I have all of my systems under all of my different clouds. I have all of my hypervising systems. I have all my library servers. I can see into all my data centers, all my Pixie servers. I can look at my vCenter environments on the VMware frame. I can look at my VMM servers. I can assign VLANs, VIP topologies, load balancing solutions. Right? I've got a bunch of big IP running here at the show. I can go and manage it. I can address and assign it to a tier. So think about that. I build a template, right? I assign a 3-tiered app, data, compute. I assign it 5 load balancers. I pre-configure it. I submit it for the HR person to deploy, and it just goes out and blows the whole thing out and puts it in production. Yes?
I'm just curious, how much of it do you have to build prior so you have the tools?
All of this comes baked into Virtual Machine Manager 2012 by default. So the pre-configuration is you bringing in those technologies and, in essence, agent connecting them into your environment. So the Azure has to call back to VMM so it can see it. The different Hyper-V servers have to talk to System Center so they can be seen. The load balancers have to be in a pool that's assigned within VMM. So we do absolutely some configuration, but we can also do a lot of the adds now, like almost hot plugging. So if you buy those new solutions that you just put in place and you have IPMI, for instance, or ILO solutions, you will see them. So IPMI baseboard solutions, everyone knows pretty much. So how many of you are managing through remote solutions on your servers? Standard remote network interfaces. So those will allow me not only to look for new gear, so this can go and scan a network, find new stuff, bring it into the fold, and configure it right in. So even if it's not pre-configured, I can go out and find it without even using an agent. So nothing is necessarily something I have to manually config, but most of us know our gear that's already in place. We'll bring that in the fold. New stuff that comes in post that will be most likely a discovery process that takes mere seconds, and then I assign it. And that includes P2V work. Say I have a physical system out there and I want to V it over into the library pool. I can start doing some amazing things within this one management environment to really transform my life. But the discovery is 100% across all the gear. So every major provider that we work with within our partner ecosystem, we have insight into. Insight meaning at the management level, both agent and agentless. Okay, so whether they have a relationship where we have IPMI communications, or whether we just have to go out and physically discover it and do a fingerprint to find out what that thing is. Meaning look at OS fingerprinting at the layers, the TCP layers, start probing to figure out what is this new thing that's out there in the LAN. We can basically look at all of that stuff. Does that help? Yes. Yes. It has the ability to do Pixie, yes. Any other questions? Yes? No, System Center has the ability. Yeah. I think the question was System Center, correct? Yeah, so his question was System Center. Now understand, VMM has the ability to manage the Pixie servers. So I can go in. I don't know if he has any on the floor here. So he does. So I can connect to it. I can manage it from VMM. So through RDP, right? Not undifferent to any other tool, right? So I do have, in some cases, yes, the ability to do that through VMM, but it's just sending me out through 3389 through a traditional RDP port. But still, that's pretty powerful. I never left this one console. So everything I can do this way. And that's the power of it. It's keeping you in one place doing your job across the entire company's environment. I mean, I don't know. Does anyone know of another solution out there other than RightScale that comes close, if anyone knows what I'm talking about? Yes? Pretty close, yeah. Anyone else? I mean, think about what this is doing. And I know we're off topic, too, because this is supposed to be a hybrid discussion. But, but it sounds like you guys didn't get enough VMM training, which is unfortunate. Or is it that you guys and gals are not management people by default? Are you management people? Oh, then I'm trumping them. Oh, no. They're going to hate me. So the bottom line is, and I'll get out of this so we can get back to the deck, but the bottom line is that we're going to give you that single point of visualization of your entire IT landscape. Whether it's our stuff, or their stuff, we're going to be there to provide you one place to look and get into it. And that's what we're trying to provide. I'm going to skip these in support of the demo going a little bit long and talk about the different parts of Azure that you need to know about. The web role provides web capabilities. The VM role provides VM transformation up to Azure from premise. What does that mean? I'll get into it. Basically taking a VHD and uploading it into Azure, sysprepping it up, and turning it on with application logic to become a worker role, right? In essence, to become a fully foundational virtual machine running up in Azure. That is still a growth area. So I don't want to sell you that you can go today on Azure and do your infrastructure as a service with VMs that you already own and that they'll all go up and work. We're still working to bring all that to life, but we are getting pretty close. And as we push towards the fall to winter, this stuff will start to be completed. And anyone who's followed Azure knows that Azure has been very much a stepping stone solution, right? Our SQL is growing, our identity's coming in, and we're bringing a lot of these pieces to life. Now, one of the things to understand is that the roles employ physical solutions. IIS for the web role. You have your web services, databases that go out for the worker role. So if you're running SQL Azure database up in Azure, you'll be running in a worker environment. Then you have the VM roles that allow you to really start to do some impressive stuff. The VM role, I believe, down the road, and I can't predict this, I can only say I believe, at some point I'll be able to use that VM role to do some very complex hybrid interconnect. Right? Assuming I can get to most of the service framework of Windows 08 R2 sitting up in that VM role, I have to assume I'll be able to do a lot of cool bridgeheading back to premise even without an agent. Right? VPNing, RAS, IPsec, direct, things like that, direct access. So building a VM, I convert it from a DVD or VHD, prepare the VHD, create the service model, store that VHD up in Azure, right? I sysprep it. I remote in, reboot it once. After I do that, the blob for that store sits up in Azure. I can clone all day long. And I can just grow and retract that thing to the nth degree. So one of the cool things about running in a public cloud is how quick you can deal with load requirements for capacity growth and capacity retraction. premise is never going to be as fast as a pure cloud architecture. Let me explain. Azure is very much like our premise world. But one of the differences is that we run things in parallel up there for redundancy and fault tolerance. So I'm never ever providing one single point of failure for any role that's running up in Azure. And I'm spreading that wealth out, not unlike how supercomputers work. Right? So from a fabric perspective, there are lots of things that I would want to run up there where I know they may not be important to me to run internal, but yet they are important to my company enough that I need to consider a better architectured solution to run them. This is where premise may not have the capacity, the network bandwidth at my facility. Microsoft has bandwidth in plethora. When you RDP into this VM up there, you're doing like almost 100 megabits down and up. Right? You're basically paying to play at a consumption-based price, right? So you're paying for that, but you have that. So your customers never experience the pain that may come with your own facility and fabric. So I put a lot of web workloads up here. I recommend to retail companies, big ones, this is where you should drop those web front ends or your commerce front ends, right? Still send all the rest of that stuff back inside to the premise, but really start to look at transforming some of those bandwidth hogs, if you will, up to places where you can start to control the cost of them. Right? How many of you have rogue systems in your network that eat more than others? I mean, come on if you don't raise your hand. Are you really under that much network control? So no one has rogue servers taking up more bandwidth than other systems inside their network. Wow. Wow. One guy. Okay. Or maybe, wow. Well, then you've come to fruition on the Knox side, which is congratulations. So that's what it looks like when you're transforming that VM role. Once I do that, I am able to clone that environment over and over again, like I said earlier. Now, Windows Azure Connect is the way to encrypt and take a public Azure service and bind it back to a premise Windows stack. Okay? So this is an agent that sits up and also gets deployed on the premise gear inside the LAN. Okay? And that's what allows us to do that highly encrypted connection to bridge a public asset and a private asset together. That's how you create a hybrid. And then that's how you manage it. Never at any time do I have to worry about anybody compromising that because it's a fully encrypted channel back to my company. Think of it as expansion, data center expansion off-site for me, right? If I wish not to publicly expose that asset, I never have to. So say I want to build a new web front end even for my internal employees, but I want to house it up in Azure because it's better capable to handle it and it's going to be cheaper than putting a whole new web server online or a new web VM. I go and build it up in Azure, I run it, I mount it, I don't publicly expose it, and then I bring it back over the agent. It becomes now an extended part of my premise, and it's never even really a hybrid at that point. It's taking private public clouds to life, right? Private public clouds, like we would have caged physical gear in other people's data center in the past. Very cool stuff. I mean, this is truly what we all should be thinking about because that's mere pennies a month, pennies to dollars a month. If it's static and it's getting minimal hits, why should I procure a couple $100 server when I can pay pennies, throw it up as an Azure web service? So these are just pieces. I hope they're helpful. But that's the... Yeah. Yep. No. So I'll talk about that. It's a good question. The question is, do we use the traditional Kerberos and login mechanisms, and do I have to join the domain? To get a lot of the benefit of what I just talked about in the private public, we have a DC join operation, and I'll show you that in a second, that takes the public Azure service and DC joins it back to the premise so that it puts it under the fold of my directorate control, right? And I'll actually show it. It's a really good question. And I hope everyone got what I said, because if I really wanted that to be out in the public but part of my domain, I really need to bring that into the fold of my domain, right? So that I can federate my users who are sitting in my domain and not have them abstract a new login credential, right? So it's very important that you think about the power that the DC join, and let me, I can skip to it actually. I'll come back. So here we are. You preempted me, but that's good. So it's a plugin, right? Logs in through Windows Azure role. Allows the user to have domain account privileges. Single sign-on across to the public cloud assets, right? It installs as an agent. You have to put it on the domain. You have to put it on the DNS servers, right? Has full multiple DC environment capability. So we've already solved all those headaches, right? We have the plugins for those things, right? You're going to use this when you want to do expansion up into a public cloud, but keep it as a domain-level system or a domain application system. And that's what's cool about Azure. They have all these pieces. And beyond this, we're going to talk about Windows Identity Foundation, which starts bringing in that identity foundation for federation. So if you're OK, I'll go forward from here, because I only skipped network behavior, which we already talked about, and I only skipped management of the network policies. So very similar to the DC plugins, we have the ability to manage those policies as well. So I can control everything: LAN, access, IP scope, everything across the hybrid. Now, this gets into the identity side, because the most important thing in hybrid is that traditional identity is not enough. So to get to the guys in the rear's question about domain joining of assets between public and private, is that requirement? For domain level things, it is. If you want to go beyond a domain, you need to start thinking about claims-based authentication. Claims-based authentication talks about, what do I do when I want to go across to other partners beyond federation? Things like Facebook, Identity Interconnect, right? Twitter, right, for single sign-on. So I'm going to take you through something real quick. So say I have an environment, I have a domain, set of data centers, I have users I service, I have an Active Directory environment, right? I have federation, I have authentication and DIR services in place, traditional data center today. But now I start building my applications. I start looking at Windows Azure. That looks good. I think I'll push my app up there using the Windows Azure portal, and I'm going to show you that in a second. But now I want to expand that relationship to my partners, right? Channel, e-commerce partners. I want to start federating. I want to start doing beyond federation. Then I want to go global. I want to touch all my customers, right? I want their input. I want to get to their Google, their Yahoo, their LinkedIn's, their Facebooks. Think about it. Do you think an Active Directory from anyone is capable of doing this out of the box? I doubt there's any LDAP store that exists that can do this. So we have to look at new authentication realms. And what Azure is saying is, we believe claims is a better way to do this type of relationship building. Let's face it, social media might as well be a profitable business for almost every corporation. We use it in marketing for demand generation, for direct marketing campaigns. We, in some cases, get better marketing results from Twitter armies than we do from base periodical ads that we put in for many, many thousands of dollars. So how do I connect in all these ecosystems now? This is truly hybrid. Think about this. And this is hybrid plus partner plus social. This is digital. This is where it's all going. This is really where access needs to be. And we have solutions now in place between our public and our premise to deliver this. So we can deliver these connections. And this is super powerful. How many people have execs that use Twitter or LinkedIn or Facebook to make updates, both professional and personal? Raise your hand. Right? How much of it gets out into the public real quick? Raise your hand. A lot of it. So it is a means to push out company doctrine, right? Everyone would probably agree with that. So wouldn't it be great if I had some way to control that, identify that, make sure those people are who they are that I'm dealing with and working with in the channel, right? Also Wi-Fi, mobile, right? So getting with those partners. Now, the service-oriented approach to it, and really, we're going to get close here because I know I have exactly 14 minutes left to Q&A with you. So I'm going to stop. Actually, I'm going to move ahead. Let me just move ahead of this because this may be less important than the next. So hang on one second here. Here we go. This is what I want to talk about. So how does this invoke? How does that whole build-up I just told you invoke? Up in Azure sits the Windows Identity Foundation service. That foundation service bridges into Active Directory Federation Services v2. It allows me to fully federate back and forth, transitive or singular, one way, right? It allows me to bridge both. Through claims-based authentication, I'm able to provide all that framework and knowledge, .NET, programming, modeling of claims. I can do Windows Server role identification, single sign across the public and the private. So I'm in complete control. Domain trust is in place. And as an Active Directory person, I'm maintaining the policies of my company. So we have that agent sitting up. You can use Visual Studio to build the packages to couple to that identity framework. So if I'm transforming a VHD up into Azure, I would package that up. I would push it up to a blob. Then I would wrap a CS package around my application pointing to that VHD I just pushed up. And that's how I would start to produce public services, right? Whatever it would be from the perspective of a VM image role. If I don't need a VHD, then I'll use the worker roles or I'll use the web role. But this is the identity claims-based authentication that we believe is going to be required for success when you start tying in public, private, private, public, ISP hoster, and off-site. Off-site remote, so outsourcing of data center topology, right? Now, the WIF works on 3 mechanisms of authentication. They have the FAM module. They have the SAM module. Let me just build out. And then I'm going to close with Q&A because I may be getting deeper than we need to on identity. The user requests an agent service or claim or wants to do something across a public or a public request to a service wherever they are. They could be in the cloud. They could be on premise. They're going to go through the FAM. It's going to redirect them. It's a token handler. It's going to do claims filtering. It's going to take them into the SAM, which does session handling, okay? Handles the session control. And then the CAM module handles the claims-based authentication that pumps into the service. So we're taking them through a controlled, secure model to access that service. And the slides are available for those that are trying to photograph it. Don't worry about it. So for ASP.NET applications, for .NET applications, for services that you're running up in the public realm, this is the way you're going to authenticate in, right? And it's very powerful. Now, in closing, in 2 minutes, I'm going to explain the services that you want to endeavor on going into a public and a private hybrid. The first is web services, okay? And I talked about this. If you've got .NET apps, you should be up in Azure. If you've got PHP, you should be up in Azure. You shouldn't be running these on-premise, okay? If you're using Java, if you're using any of these social media interconnects, you're likely to find really good capability in Azure to formulate connections to those social media pieces. If you have static and dynamic websites for your company, if you're running content distribution requirements internal through your own data centers and want to get away from having all those data centers, use ours instead. Let us do the CDN for you. It's cheaper for us to do it than you'll ever be able to do it yourself. So cut your bandwidth costs in your data centers and your facilities and not do the CDN, the Akamai stuff anymore, right? Let us handle it. We can give you the shortest hop to source globally through our data centers, right? Social media sites, why should you even run them internally? I would never. So don't bring those to premise. Don't put them in your own networks. Run them up on someone's cloud, hopefully ours. Conferencing audio services and solutions. As we move forward, those are going to be prime candidates to run up in the public cloud. He's baffled. Why? How? The user data sits very safe on premise, but the actual client pieces would sit up in the cloud. Link is a good example of something that's moving towards that direction, where web enablement for IM and presence and comms. Oh, let's face it. What do you think is better capable? The question was, he's got trepidation, I guess. Well, why don't you ask your question first?
Well, I mean, you start to get into quality of service. I mean, you have links that you can't identify in terms of what that QoS would be for your various real-time services like audio.
Yeah, so it's a good question to ask, and I'll give you hopefully a good answer. So the question was, why would you ever do VoIP or anything like that through a public realm, right? You can't control the quality of services. You're not in control of that. The fact is, let me first baseline, and I won't throw percentages, but I would guarantee most customers' networks do not have the bandwidth capability of public cloud providers already in place today, meaning the peer relationships in most of these public data center cloud providers are 1,000 times more capable than any enterprise corporation could provide internal to their data center. That's probably a very solid statement. Assuming that's not the case and you have equal bandwidth to a cloud provider, right? I'm talking a major cloud provider like Azure and Amazon. They've got it in spades. Otherwise, they wouldn't be doing this. Let's face it, if every public cloud user took down the public cloud, no one would have QoS. So they have all that built up in the cloud, themselves, the cloud providers. They also sell you bandwidth. So when you buy into consumption-based cloud services, you're paying to guarantee that QoS, right? They're providing load balancers with QIP capability to go in and guarantee protocol authority, right, to guarantee bandwidth for specific protocols, just like traditional load balancers do, and even firewalls do, and proxy servers do today. That's all sitting up there just as nicely up in the public cloud, and you can buy into all of that through a cloud provider. So to answer the question, yeah, I can throw anything I want to go up into a cloud if the cloud can handle it. I'm not saying the cloud has this today, by the way. I'm saying it's a scenario that can become a cloud service. And I do believe it will. Just like, well, I don't want to comment on the acquisition, so I'm sorry, I'll just end there. Because that's not a closed, well, it is what it is. The fact is, Skype's a great example of it, right? They are a cloud VoIP provider. They're their own. And they've had down periods. I've been a user for 7 years. Yeah, right, they've gone down. But they're up 99%, I would say, because that's the first and only time I've ever had real pain with Skype in many, many years of service. So I don't think you'll have a problem, and here's why. They said the same thing about streaming videos a couple years ago, and everyone knows where I'm coming from. Oh, that YouTube stuff, the internet doesn't have the bandwidth for it. Hulu, never succeed, right? Because no one's got the bandwidth. They got so much bandwidth. It's coming out of their ears. There's no problem with that. There's really no problem with that. They'll be able to pull that off. I'm just saying, I believe, and the industry backs me up on this, because that specific conferencing statement comes from an industry analysis of potential cloud-hosted solutions by another provider of that audit. Okay, and I'll be happy to get you that information. Send it to Peter MEI. Now, in closing, web data services, databases not using P2 information, read-only stores that are exposing commerce information like shirt sizes, colors, right? Things like that, things that aren't my customer data, right? Pricing, basic stuff. CRM services, because we already do this, right? We have Microsoft Dynamics, right? It runs up in the cloud. People are putting beyond just basic stuff up in the cloud now. Small business is attached to this strongly. So customer relationship management, we have a lot of customers go up to the cloud and they manage their customers, data, all of that. So that is a good example of I would say, a strategic service provided that's very tightly controlled and isolated, right? That would be the Microsoft CRM Dynamics solution. I can go and do all my providership solutions. Travelocity, many different companies are using the cloud for their parts and pieces. Kayak, Expedia, I can continue to name names. Target is going towards that direction. right? They're already highly virtualizing. Payroll web front ends, AR and PR systems, email web front ends. And notice I'm saying front end, not back end. Public SharePoint portals for team worker sites, right? Why do I have to VPN in to chat with my team or share data, right? All of that stuff is possible, right? But also, I believe, with secure interconnect in the public and the premise, you can start to do very important stuff because you can control that security. So things like business intelligence reporting, database synchronization from premise to public, either for archiving purposes or as failover backup, right? It's great. The cloud is perfect for that. Secure messaging for distributed and hybrid applications, disaster recovery for backup and recovery, CRM web-driven federated to the premise, unified corporate business comms, unstructured data and relational stores, and the list goes on. App caching, right, if you want to have faster return, application hosted federated back to premise, and of course HPC node distribution. How many of you use high performance computing? Good. So wouldn't it be great if I could spin up another 1,000 HPC nodes to crunch those numbers in a mere matter of minutes by going to the cloud and turning on that node service to compute more nodes, and then when I'm done, I turn it off. I paid a few $100 instead of having to buy 1,000 new nodes because my company needed it for a small project. Right? That's where the cloud's going to be very, very powerful. I go up, I use more nodes. Thank you, Mr. Big Pharma. I won't mention a specific name, but they do this today. They go up, they do genome research, they do medicine research, they need another 10,000 nodes. They either go to Amazon or they go other places like us, and boom, they can do that stuff. They don't need it anymore. They get rid of it. Consumption-based use. And that's what the cloud's supposed to provide. So these are all things that you can do. Now, in closing, that's just scratching the surface. I am only one person. I bet you there's more ideas in this room than in my deck. You have to figure it out for your company. But we're here to help. And we have a solution no matter where you are. No matter where you are. You could be a customer, not even virtualized today, and we'll get you on your way. And we're not going to sell you a full cloud stack. We're going to walk you through the journey. Once you get to a private cloud, you want to get knowledgeable on Azure because it's a developer-orientated environment. Meaning for most infrastructure people, we must educate up to be good in Azure. I highly recommend you do that. And it's easy for that to be accomplished by going to Microsoft.com to the Windows Azure links in my site. I have the Windows Azure Training Toolkit links in my reference. You can download it. It's 263 megabytes. It will give you great training for any IT pro who wants to start doing services enablement in Azure, start working with the Connect solutions. You have to sign up for the following 3 things. Traffic Manager is currently in beta. Allows you to manage traffic and QoS up in Azure. Then you have the Connect services for the Connect. And then you have the VM role. Okay? They're in beta. So when you go up and sign into the Azure portal to join Azure for a subscription, first go to the Azure portal and get the free trial. Use it for 30 days. Go to the Beta Programs tab, and let me just show you this. And then I'm opening it up to Q&A. I promise. Yes, absolutely. So here is the Azure portal. I can manage everything from here. You see the Beta Program tab in the bottom? You'll have that when you get your login and your free trial. When you click on that, you will have those new beta programs. I'm even pending, and I work for the company. Okay? Customers first, employees second, so we're letting it go to the customers and then to us. But you can see, and I do have it working. This is just a demo front end. But pending, and then in a couple days you'll get approved, right? And then start using it. This is really, truly the power of what the public and the private environments that we're bringing to market, along with our System Center management tool to really orchestrate. And I'll tell you, if this doesn't excite you, I don't know what will, because this, to me, is revolutionary. And I feel really good that we're going to bring to market the best hybrid environment potential for you. Now with that, I want to open it to question and answer. We have about 10 minutes left. So please, oh gosh. Turn on the mics, please.
I'm not actually asking you a question, but I do want to say if people here are obviously interested in private clouds, I would like to get some input from people on something that you might have heard of called the Windows Azure Platform Appliance.
Yes.
And I'm looking for an input session, a focus group type thing that we're looking to run tomorrow. If you're interested in maybe taking part in that, hearing about it and providing us with some input, either find me here at the end of this session, or I'll be in the Server and Cloud Platform TLC in like 10 minutes or so.
And
so my name is David Lowe, and very interested in talking to people in large organizations that might be interested in that kind of private cloud implementation.
Fabulous. David Lowe, he's responsible for Windows Azure Appliance within Windows Server. So with that, if there's no questions, I want to thank everyone for coming and enjoy the rest of TechEd. Thank you.